Uh,
Uh, okay, so yeah, anything that you want to ask?
yeah, I want to join from GFG portal. Is it possible right now?
No, so when you have joined through this app, so what's the issue with is in joining with the Zoom app?
Okay, actually, this is okay. No worries.
This is my intro. I'm Shashi, and I'm tech lead and mentor at GFG. Before that, I was in Adobe for 2 years. I was mainly in backend, but I have worked on React as well. I have worked on some front end things. So I was in Adobe Sign team, which is a part of Acrobat. So you can send a document, a PDF file for signature using the Adobe Sign. So yes, I have worked on the Java and backend stuff for 2 years, across 2 years in Adobe. And before that, I was in Paytm for 1 year. And again, I was in backend using Java and Spring Boot. I was in Paytm Wallet team, which is a part of Paytm Payments. And I'm 16 batch graduate from IIT Allahabad. So yeah, this is my short intro. Uh, okay. So today we'll discuss about like what is the like what is the client server architecture and what is the APIs, what is the request response, and then we'll discuss about. Okay, you can simply keep yourself on mute. If you want to speak something, then you can unmute yourself and ask your doubt so that it won't create unnecessary noise. Uh, no, you don't need to take any notes actually. Yeah. Okay, so I hope I'm audible to everyone. Yes. Okay, so if I'm not audible, then you can simply try the fix given in the WhatsApp group. Like you have to join with the audio. Okay. Yes, I mean in this project we have 3 projects, so that you can find out the course page itself. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing is what is a web service? Like what is a web application or web service? So anyone who has any idea about like what is web service or web application?
An interface used for communication between two applications.
I mean, two applications can interact without being on web, right?
No, some sort of medium should be there.
No, what I'm saying is, so let's say if you have two uh, applications running on the same machine, so they can communicate without web, right?
Is it something when we like, for example, for in Spring MVC, we have a dispatcher servlet and it passes the
I'm
control.
not asking. I'm not asking for the server. Okay, so it's something which is on web and which is doing some service, right? So web service means it's something which is on web and doing some service. So, like, I mean, Google is a web service, right? Google is a web application because it's on web and we can access that. Again, like Adobe, so all the services of Adobe are on web. All the services of Microsoft are on web. All the services of Uber are on web, right? So all these are example of web services. So let me show you like how a client uses these services, which is exposed in the web. So let me share my screen. I hope my voice is clear, right?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. Yeah. So this is google.com, right? And when you will, let's say I'm going to search in. So, okay. Let me remove these things. So when in the browser, I'm writing something like this, Sachin, google.com/Sachin, q equal to, sorry, google.com/search. I hope you can see that. Search question mark q equal to Sachin. So when I'm writing that thing on the browser, I'm getting this HTML page as a response. So here google.com is the server, is the web application, and Chrome, the browser, is the client. Or you can say like google.com is the server and this browser is a client. And this thing called, so this thing is the request, and the HTML thing that we are getting is the response. And if I talk more specifically, this search is the API which is exposed by the Google. So here search is a Google API which we are using, and to search something on web, on Google, right? Okay. Okay, I'll repeat that. So let me switch off. Yeah, I think now it should be clear, right? Okay, and if I'm not audible, then you can try the fix given on the WhatsApp group. Let me write here. Okay, so okay. Yeah, so when we are on google.com and when we are, okay, so let's say we are simply hitting this URL in a browser, right? So we are going to hit the search API of google.com. The input is Sachin, right? So API is nothing but a method. So search is a function of Google web server, and I'm calling that function. And the input is this word called Sachin, right? If I'm calling that method, if I'm calling that API, I'm getting a response as a HTML form. So this is what we are, we can see that on the screen. So it's the response from the google.com, right? So this thing is called the request. So request will have the server, I mean IP of the server, or you can say that the domain name of the server, and then you have to specify the API. Like here we are hitting the search API of Google. So this is called the API. API is nothing but a method of a server, right? And of course, a method, a function will have some input. So here the input is Sachin. Sachin is a word which is the input. So Google server is getting that request and processing the request, and it's returning the response as the HTML form, right? I hope this thing is clear, right? Like what is it? I mean, so here Google is the server, Chrome browser is the client. This whole thing is the request. The HTML page that we got is the response, and this search is the API. Search is the method of the server that we are calling. So I hope these terms are clear, right? What is server client and what is the API? Any doubt in this thing? Okay, looks like some of you are facing issue in joining the session. Let me bring in the concept too. Actually, some of you are still facing issue in joining the session in some helping in the WhatsApp group. Okay. Yeah, what I was saying is, so when we are hitting this search thing, So when we are searching something, we are simply hitting the search API of Google, and the input is searching. That's why we are getting this response as HTML page. So let's explore some more APIs, some more web services. So here google.com is one of the web services. So in this course, we'll learn how to create our own web service, how to create our own web application, and how we can write the code so that we can expose our APIs over the network, and any client can use that API to do something. That's the idea of this course. Like, this is what we'll be learning in that course, building some web applications like Google or ATM. The words are not clear. So is the audio issue, or is it my speed, like my talking speed? Is there any issue in the audio quality? Okay. Okay, I will speak slowly and slowly. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, let's explore some more APIs. Okay, so here the Chrome is the client. We can have some other client as well, right? Let me explain that. Like, what other clients we can have? Sorry. So here we have, let's say, this is the Google server, and it has an API called search, which is exposed on internet, and any client can call that API to get something, to search something, right? So here the client was Chrome browser, right? So here the client was a browser. Again, let's say if you have an Android application, so Android application also can be, so any Android application or any mobile application, it could be iOS app, it could be Windows app. So any mobile application can be a client, and they also can hit the same API to get something. Right. So you can write some code. You can write some code in the Android or iOS to hit that API, and again that API will return some response, and you can use that data to show on your application, on your Android application, or any other client side application. Okay, so let's explore some more APIs on internet. The one API, okay, another client could be, so apart from browser and the Android thing, we can have clients like Postman. So Postman is again a client very similar to browser. So using Postman, you can hit any API, right? So using, let's see how we can use Postman to hit, let's say, the same API. Because we'll be using Postman to hit a lot of APIs. So let's see how we can use the, okay. So let me hit the same API. So let's say this is the API I'm going to hit with the Postman. So for now, you can ignore this get method or something. You just need to know, like, okay, I'm going to hit the search API of google.com, and the input is search it, right? So by clicking send button, you will be hitting that API. So in the response, we got an HTML page. The response is HTML page, and if you can save this HTML page in a file, you will have the similar output. Like, so this is again an HTML page that we got from the google.com, and when I am hitting the same API from another client called Postman, we are again getting the similar response. When the response is again an HTML page, HTML content. The browser is able to understand that content. That's why we can see that, that images and other things. Here, like this client, the Postman, is not able to understand that HTML. That's why we can see the plain HTML here. But the idea is, I mean, we can hit that API from any client. The client could be a browser, the client could be a tool like Postman, the client could be an Android application, the client could be another web service. So we can hit the Google API from another services as well. Okay. So let me explore some other APIs. Okay. So are you aware about GitHub? Like what is GitHub? So I'm going to explore some APIs of GitHub, which is free. Okay. Is the audio quality fine now? Okay. Yeah. So okay. So the audio issue could be. Okay. So you can simply. Okay. So you can simply keep yourself on mute. If you want to ask something, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. And if something is not that important, you can simply ping in the chat section. Okay. Yeah. So I hope all of you are aware of like what is GitHub. If not, then what is so Postman is a tool. It's very similar to browser. So again, after the course, I'll share link, and with the help of link, you can install the Postman on your machine, and then you can try these things by yourself. So I'll share those details on the WhatsApp group. I hope all of you are on the WhatsApp group, because we'll be sharing a lot of things on the WhatsApp itself. So you must be there. If you're not there, then you can simply let me know. Yeah, so this search thing is API. Like in the last example, we were hitting the search method of server. So API is nothing but a function, a method of a server. Like here, I'm using the search method of google.com. So search is the API. Okay. Yeah, let's explore some more APIs. So let me show you the GitHub thing. Like what is GitHub, and then we'll be exploring GitHub through APIs. So GitHub is a website where you can so you can upload your projects, you can search your project, you can search a user. Like if I want to search a project on Spring, then I can simply type Spring, and the GitHub will show a lot of results on Spring, right? So here I am again. Here we are calling the search API of github.com to search a repository, and the github.com is returning a list of projects which are based on GitHub. Okay, so let's explore some more APIs on GitHub. So on GitHub, you can search a repository and you can search a user as well, right? So let's see how we can call these APIs. Yeah, don't worry, we'll be sharing everything, right? All the please explain the use and functions of GitHub. Okay, the use of GitHub is you can share your projects on GitHub, and users can explore, users can search your project on GitHub. That's the use of GitHub. Again, you can simply watch some YouTube videos to learn more about GitHub. Yeah, we'll be sharing all the links, like how to install Postman, what is Postman, and how to call APIs with the help of Postman. So yeah, we'll be sharing all those links. Don't worry. Audio is breaking. Okay, so this could be, I mean, because of your internet connection. Like if your internet connection is not stable, in that case, voice could be breaking for you. Yeah, it looks like it's fine for some of you, and it's yeah, it looks like it's only your issue. So you can simply check your internet connection. Yeah. Okay. So basically, on GitHub, you can search a repository, I mean, we can search repositories with the help of any technology or anything. And then you can search users as well on GitHub, right? So let me call the APIs of GitHub using browser itself. So the one API of GitHub is this one. So here I'm going to call the server api.github.com. Here the API is search API and search slash user. So basically I'm searching in the users, and let's say the input is Shashi, right? So let me do that. The interesting thing is that here I'm hitting the api.github.com. It's not same as the github.com. Like here, when we are interacting with the browser or interacting with the UI, we are interacting with github.com, but here we are interacting api.github.com, right? So let me simply do the same stuff here itself. Going to call the same API on the GitHub browser. I have to explore in the, okay. So I can simply explore the user. So the interesting thing is that here I'm searching things using UI, like I'm searching things with the help of some buttons and all. Apart from that, I can search something using the API. Like, okay, so if you see the results, like here, if I'm calling the search API of api.github.com by passing the username as Shashi, you will see the results are 4708. Like we have 4,700 results. And from UI also we are getting the same result, right? So basically here UI are also involved, the front end is also involved, but here we are simply interacting with only the back end. And this thing is called the JSON. So let me describe the basics of JSON. While going through this course, can you also touch upon the system design for backend, Twitter, Paytm? Yes, I mean, we are learning the backend thing in this course. So yeah, we'll learn how to design a backend system. Will you teach GPRS, gRPC? I don't know what is gRPC, so I don't know how I can teach that. So the one thing is you can simply go on Google and read about that. What is gPRC? You can simply, okay, it's, so I mean, I don't know what is GPS. So I don't think I will be teaching that thing. The Google remote procedure. Okay, Google remote procedure. I don't know about that thing, so I don't think I can teach that. The second thing is that I mean, you can learn things by yourself. Right? You don't need a mentor to teach you everything, right? I'll be teaching the things which are important and which I know. So I don't know everything, so I can't teach everything. And second, you don't need to know everything. So yeah, I mean, you don't need to know about Google remote procedure call to be a backend developer. Basics should be strong. From there we can learn anything. Yes, in fact we will learn basics as well, right? Can you please keep the query session later, please? Yes, I mean that's good idea. So you can ask your doubts in the end of the section, in the end of the session. But I mean, if you're not able to understand something, then you can ask your doubts. And don't, when you can simply send message in the chat section, don't ping privately. Just a confusion if Google the API. Okay. Yes, after the course you can create your own web service using Spring. I have confusion. Isn't Google the API and search one the endpoint of the API? No, Google is a server, right? Google is a web service. So when you are using Paytm is a web service, it's a web application, right? It's not the API. Here search is the API, and again here search is the API. Okay, so let me explain the JSON thing. Like what is JSON? Okay, so let's say if I have a user class. So let's say we have a GitHub user or Facebook user or any user. So user will have, let's say, ID, name, age, and these things. So how to store this information? Let's say if I'm a client and client wants to know details of a given user, right? So in which form the server can respond the data to the client? So the one way is JSON. Using JSON, you can return data to the client. I mean, this is just a way of representing data. So in JSON, let's say if I want to store something, what I'll do is I'll write things like this. ID is 1, let's say. Name is Ramu. Let's say age is 30. So yeah, so this is the simple syntax of JSON. I mean, this is one way of representing data, right? So normally when the client and server communicate, they transfer the data using JSON itself. I mean, XML is another way, but I mean nowadays everyone is using JSON, so JSON is more trending and it's easier to use. That's why we'll be using JSON in this course, and most of the APIs return data in the JSON itself, right? So yeah, and you can simply ask okay, so you can simply keep yourself on mute and you can unmute yourself and ask some doubts if there is any. Okay, so let's see how we can call the GitHub APIs. Okay, so yeah, so here I'm calling the search method of GitHub, and again in search we have one more level, which is I'm searching within the users, and I'm searching a user called Shashi. So basically it will search all the users in which the username is starting with Sashi, right? So that's the case. So here we have around 4,000 users on GitHub, which has name similar to Shashi. So this is the one detail, like this is the information of one user, like his login ID is Shashi, the ID is this one, so this avatar URL is the image of that user. Let's see what is the photo of, so I mean, we can see the photo of that user. So, and this is the image of that user was login ID Shashi, and you can find other details like his profile URL and his repository and everything. Okay, like you can't call the Facebook. I mean, you can't call the Facebook API and you can't get the details of Facebook users because those APIs are not public. I mean, the GitHub APIs are public. That's why we are able to search a user, and that's why we are able to see the photos of that user, but all the APIs are not public and you can't access the data of a given user, right? Okay, so like this is information of a one user, and then this is the information of second user. So total we have 4,000 users, right? So we can't get all the users in one call. So yeah, so you can simply hit by yourself and count that. So what I'm trying to explain is this thing is called the request, and again you search the API, and this thing is response. But now the response type is JSON because we are getting the data, we are getting the response data in the JSON, right? I mean these things are these things are stored in the JSON. So here I'm getting data in the JSON format. So let's call this API using the another client, which is Postman. Yeah, so I'm going to hit the same API with the same value from the Postman. So I can expect the same result from the GitHub. Yeah, the results is same. We have again the total count is this much, and the details of the first user are this, then the second user are this. So what I'm trying to say is, if you have an API on web, so any client can call that API to get some data, right? Like the one client is Chrome browser and the second client is the Postman, right? Okay. We have one more API, which is, let's say if I want to search a given user, let's say if I want to know let's say if I know the login ID of a given user and I want to know all the details of that user, then we have an API called user/username, right? So this API will return information of a given user. So let me hit this API. So this API will return information of only a single user, which has the login, this one, right? Let me call this API from the browser. Here we are getting the response, and it's the information of the single user, which is Shashi. I mean the username is Shashi PK. This is my GitHub. I think it should be mine. Yeah, it's mine. Yeah. So you can simply, let's say if I'm changing the input as Shashi, then it will be the details of the another user, right? Which is in. So yeah, I mean, so the idea is you can simply change the inputs and you will have different outputs. So APIs are very similar to functions, methods, in which you will have some input, and depending on the input, you will have different output, right? So this is the basics of API. So as a backend developer, your work will be writing code for APIs. And again, this data will be stored somewhere, like when we are hitting the GitHub server to search the information of this user. I mean, it will be stored somewhere. So to do that, they use some database. That's why we'll be using database in this course, like how we can store data in some database. And again, databases are slower than the cache, so that's why we'll be learning about cache as well. Like we'll learn about Redis, like how Redis can help us to search data faster. Do we store JSON data in DB? No. We'll learn how to store data in DB. So we'll learn everything. Don't worry. Where we can find API method for a particular tool? They have the documentation. So let's say if you want to explore the API of, looks like someone is session is joining the lecture. Actually, in the first lecture, it happens. I mean, a lot of users face some issue in joining the lecture. So that's. Sorry, guys. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to know the, if you want to how this is different from JCP and serverless-based website. See, okay. So we'll not be learning JSP and server because those are outdated and no. I mean, some companies who have the old product are using them, but if you want to build something, you won't be using the server to JSP because Spring and Spring Boot is much more better than the servlet in JSP. No, so my question is why we are talking about servlet in JSP? I mean, these are not relevant, right? So there are a lot of ways in which you can implement your web services. Like initially, we had servlets, JSP, then struts, then a lot of framework, and of course we have other frameworks like you can implement your services in PHP using Node.js, using Django. But here we'll be talking about the Spring Boot, that how we can create these services using Spring Boot. Creating microservices and APIs are covered in this course. So everything is written there in this course, right? So yes, I mean, this is, yeah, we'll learn how to create APIs and we'll learn how to create microservices in this course. I mean, I hope you, if you have paid the money, then you have, I mean, you must have gone through the details of the course. So yes, I mean, we'll be covering these things, the APIs and microservices. Yes, the course content has all the details. I mean, you should go through that. Okay, so I mean, this is about the APIs, and we learned like what is the client. So here the client is the browser. Here the client was a postman, and of course you can have an Android application that can call this API to get something. In fact, I can show you the APIs of Paytm as well. I hope you will not be able to see my personal data on Paytm. I think you can see my balance. That's okay. I don't think you will be able to see my. Okay, let me try first, and then I'll share my screen. So I'm going to try to show you like how we can use the Paytm APIs. So this is simple Paytm.com, right? So let me explain with the help of the Google example. So here we are at google.com, and the one way we can directly call the search API in the search bar in the URL thing. Another way is we can interact with the UI, like we can search for searching, right? So when I'm clicking that, okay, when I'm going to click that button, right? When I'm going to click that search button, so that thing is, so first they will have some JavaScript code or some UI code, which is calling this API, this search API. So of course it's adding some other parameters, which is not important for me. Like what is the source? My source means what is the machine. So your machine is the HP. I don't know. Okay. Machine, I think it's Dell machine. Okay. I mean, these things are some other details of the client, like what is the user, what is the user location. So we can ignore these things, like these things will not affect the result much. Okay. I can simply delete other fields. Yeah, so if I hit this API, I'll get the same or similar result. So the idea is you can invoke your APIs directly from the browser, or you can hit some APIs with the help of the UI, right? Because let's say if I'm a simple student, if I'm a school student and I don't know how to call the APIs, right? So to search something on Google, I'll not be hitting the APIs in the browser, right? Because I can't remember the syntax. That's why we have a UI, we have a front end thing, we have something that with the help of which you can call their APIs. Like if I'm not that qualified to call the APIs directly, then what I can do is I can simply open the google.com and I can search something with the help of this UI, the user interface, right? So I don't need to know about the search API. I don't need to know about like how to what will be the signature of the API. So I don't need to take care of those things because we have the UI thing, right? So here the front end code, the JavaScript code is invoking that API, that search API. Of course, we'll be doing all these things. We'll be writing code to implement these things. The idea of the first lecture is you should know like what exactly we'll be learning in this course and what is the agenda of this course. Like what is the meaning of a web service? What is the meaning of API? What is the meaning of a web application? And how clients use their services to do something. So similarly, here we have the Paytm.com. And let's say if you want to do, if you want to recharge my phone. So again, I mean, you can simply do that by calling the APIs. And again, the APIs are not public, so you have to, I mean, there is some authentication and authorization thing. I'll come to those things later. So when I'm clicking on this Paytm mobile prepaid thing, let me search on the flights. Yeah. So when I'm clicking on that flight thing, so now we are in the flights API, right? And when I'll be okay. Let me search on flights actually. So just focus on this thing, like how this UI is going to call some APIs of Paytm. So here we are calling the flight search API of Paytm, right? So the API name is flight search, and other details are like it's. I mean, the first input is this Delhi to Patna, and other inputs are to travelers, and yeah. If you hit the same API using the Postman, I think you can get the similar response. Yes. So we have got an HTML page. If I can save that HTML page, I will get the similar images and all those things. So basically, when we will be interacting with a web service, we will be hitting their APIs, right? So in this course, we'll learn how to create our own APIs so that clients can use our APIs to do something. I hope the purpose of APIs are clear now. Like what is the meaning of API? Please don't ping me personally. You can simply ask in the chat, in the group chat itself. Yes, please ask your doubts in the group chat section. I won't be taking your personal chat questions. Okay, and today I'll be sharing the links, like how you can try your hands on these things. I mean, how you can try hitting the Paytm APIs or Google APIs or GitHub APIs by yourself using browser or using Postman. Yes. Okay, so these are the examples of a web service. Paytm, Google, GitHub, Twitter, Facebook, everything is on web. So everything is a web service. And that's the importance of a backend developer. So every service will be on a web service, on a web, and you need a backend developer to develop that service, right? That's why there's a huge demand of backend developers. And most of the engineers will be working as the backend developer itself. Okay. Let me discuss some other basic concepts, like how exactly these things work. So let's talk about the Google thing first. Let's say we have that Google website. So when we are clicking on, when we are visiting google.com, we are seeing a page with the search bar, with the search button and all those stuff. So basically, a website will have a front end, and a website will have a back end, right? So back end, and of course, the back end will be interacting with the databases to fetch or store some data, and of course, it can interact with Redis or other things like other services or other tools. So let's not go into those details for now. So every website will have a front end, which is nothing but the combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. Like the front end might be built on a framework like Angular or React.js. Initially, I mean, before the invention of microservices, the front end and back end used to be on the same server. So if you have a look at the PHP code or PHP applications, on the same project you can write the code for backend, and in the same project you can have the code for backend, right? And in fact, initially, if I talk about the servlet and JSP, they also provide the same feature. So you can have, so in a single project you can have some code for front end, and you can have some code for backend. But right now, I mean, if you are following the architecture of microservices, your front end should be on a different project. I mean, it should be on a different machine. Like your front end should be on a different server. I mean, it should be developed using some framework like jQuery or AngularJS or React.js or any other JS framework, right? And your backend should be on a different server. Sorry, any doubt? You want to ask something? Can you show a flowchart of ODFD showing how it works? Which thing? Yeah, the flight search was the API. Yes, flight search was the API. Yeah. Okay. So in this course, we'll be discussing all those things, like how to create our own APIs and how a servers handles that request and how servers interacts with the databases to get the data or to fetch the data or to store some data. So we'll be learning all those things. I mean, the idea of this thing is like what exactly a web service is and how they works, and then we'll learn how to build them. So we'll be creating something similar to Paytm. We'll learn how we can create our own website like google.com. So that's the thing. This API hitting website and website returning. Can we code front end in Java? No. And ideally no, because your Java code. So okay, initially there was a thing called applet, and the applet can run in the browsers. Now I think I think applet is no more there, but if it is there also, then you should not use applet, because JavaScript is much more better for the front end, because JavaScript can easily run on your browsers. So it's much more powerful than the Java. So there's no point of using Java for front end. Yeah, I'm going to explain that, right? I'll explain like how these things work. Okay. Yeah, so I was talking about the front end back end thing. So initially, when the internet was invented and all the companies were building something on the web, so they were using framework like PHP, and of course Java was made for internet, so they had struts and servlet and JSP. So using servlet and JSP or using PHP or using similar framework, you can have a simple project, and in the same project you can have the backend and you can have the front end. So I mean, you can have simply different folders, like this folder is for front end and this folder is for backend, and your front end can contain HTML, CSS with JavaScript or some other things, right? But nowadays it's not a great idea to do those things, because your front end should be, I mean, it should be a different project. It should run on a different server, and your backend should be a different project, and it should be running on a different server. So let's say currently for backend we can go with framework like Spring Boot, or if you're going with Python, you can choose Django. Then we have framework like Node.js. Then we have Ruby on Rails. So you can choose any of them. Actually, most of the companies are using Java. Start from the beginning. That's why they are stick to the Spring Boot. But other frameworks like Python and Django are also good. I mean, sorry. So Node.js is not multi-threaded. So some applications might not be, appropriate for Node.js. But yeah, Django is evolving and it's quite similar to Spring Boot, right? But the idea is if you know one backend framework, then you can learn other one in 1 week because those things will be quite similar. Only the syntax will change, so you can learn those things quite easily. Okay. So what happens is when let's say we are on browser, which is the Chrome browser, and we have hit the google.com, right? So google.com will return a HTML file. So let me show you that thing. So when I'm hitting google.com, I mean, this is a web page, right? So this is nothing but a HTML page, which has some buttons, which has some text fields, right? So it's nothing but a HTML page. When we are hitting what's the difference between Spring and Spring Boot? Yeah, so Spring Boot, yeah. So Spring Boot has some extra features. So Spring Boot will have some additional features on Spring. This is Spring and this is Spring Boot. So basically in Spring Boot, we'll be using Spring. So 99% things will be of Spring itself. And Spring Boot simply adds only 1%. Some extra features on Spring Boot. So yes, in Spring Boot, we'll be using the Springs. Okay. Yeah, so when we are hitting the google.com, we are getting an HTML file, I mean HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then, so that is nothing but a UI which has this thing where we can write something and then we have the Google search button and then we have the other things, right? So when we are clicking, when we are writing something in the search bar and when we are hitting the search, of course, I mean, this UI is nothing but a combination of HTML plus CSS plus JavaScript code. So when we are clicking on that button, some JavaScript method will be invoked. And in that method, there will be some code which will be hitting the search API of the backend of the google.com. So let's say this is the backend of google.com. And in backend, we have a API called search, right? And in search, you have to pass a query parameter, q equal to something. And using that input, it will search that data in the database and it will return some response. Okay. So when we are hitting the query thing, the JS, when we are hitting that button, Google might have some JavaScript code that will be invoking that search API to get the data. So the backend will return the data to the front end, and the front end will represent that data in the browser. So this is how front end interacts with the backend. So basically, I mean, if you're interacting with the Chrome browser, then you will be interacting with the front end only because browsers can understand the front end thing quite easily, and the HTML and CSS and JavaScript file can run in the browser easily, and with the help of that, you can represent your data. So the front end code will be hitting the APIs of backend to get the data or to to store some data. Let's say when you are, let's say this is the sign up page of Facebook. Okay, so this is the UI thing, right? This is the front end, which will be let's say in which the HTML and CSS will be used and JavaScript will be used, or any other thing will be used, right? So when we are done with the filling of information like username, mobile number, email ID, and those things, and when we'll hit the submit button, the front end will hit when the call a post API, and that, so basically the front end code will hit, let's say backend will have an API called create user. Yeah, so let's say create user is an API of Facebook backend, and when a user is signing up on Facebook on the sign up page of Facebook, and when it's clicking the sign up button, it will hit the, I mean, the JavaScript code will hit the create user API of the Facebook. And of course, that in that request will have some data, like what is the username, what is the mobile number, what is the email ID. And in that request, will have that data. And the backend code, let's say the backend is built in Spring Boot. The backend code will accept that request and extract the data, extract the input data, extract the request data, like what is the username, email ID, mobile number, and other details. And then it will store those details in the database. And then it can return some response to the client. This is how front-end interacts with the client, with the backend. So in this course, we'll learn how to create these APIs, like how to create APIs for creating a new user, how to create APIs for providing functions like searching something on a web service, right? So we'll learn the creating APIs of backend. Second thing is, let's say this is the backend. Let's say this is the Paytm backend, and let's say this is the Paytm front end. Okay, so if you are interacting with a Chrome browser, then you will be interacting with the front end only, and the front end will be calling the backend. But if you are interacting with, let's say, Android app or any mobile application, I mean, it could be Android app, it could be iOS app. In that case, let's say you have this Android app and you have a button called check balance, right? So when you are hitting that check balance button, you will get the balance stored in your wallet. So you can't store this information to your local machine. Like you can't store the balance of that user within that mobile app. I mean, you can't store information on client side, right? So to get the latest data, to get the latest balance of that user, your mobile app will hit the backend API. Let's say in the backend we have API called get balance, and let's say in the get balance we have user ID as the input. So we just need to pass the user ID, and this API will return the balance of that given user from the database, right? So I mean, to do that, we can have some code in, let's say, Android, or if you are, if this application is iOS application, then you will have some code in iOS that will be hitting this API to get the balance of that user. So like here, the client is a code itself. Again, the browser is nothing but a code. I mean, browser is an application, so it's made of some code. But here, I mean, if you are an Android developer, then you will be writing some code so that when a user is clicking that check balance button, it should hit the get balance API of the backend server to get the latest balance, right? And similarly, let's say Uber has an integration with Paytm. Like when you are traveling with Uber, so you will have an option to pay with Paytm. So let's say a user has completed a tour, a ride on Uber, and he wants to pay using Paytm wallet. So Paytm should provide that functionality. So how they can do that? Again, the Uber backend. Again, the Uber will be a service. Uber will be a web service itself. So backend means simply a web service or web application. Again, a website is made of front end and back end both. But normally, when we say about a backend service or a web service or web app, we mean the backend thing, right? So here we'll have so Uber backend, the Uber web services will be hitting the Paytm APIs to transfer the money from that user's wallet to the wallet of Uber, right? And in fact, let's say this is the Google Map web service, and let's say Uber is using the Google Map services. Then again, to get the data, Uber can simply hit the Google Maps APIs to get the data of a route or something. So this is how multiple web services can interact with each other to get something. So for this backend, the client is a Chrome browser. The client is an Android application or iOS application. The client is another backend, which is another web service like Uber, and the other client could be, okay. So let's say let's say this is the HDFC Bank or any other bank. So of course, this bank will have a backend. This bank will have some APIs, and when you are adding some money to the Paytm, then it's Paytm duty to update the balance in the bank, right? So your Paytm, so Paytm will have some code. That code will be hitting the APIs of HDFC Bank to settle the amount. So this is how these services interact with each other. So basically, they call the APIs of each other. To interact with each other, they need to call the APIs of each other. Like the clients can call the APIs of the backend. Similarly, like when Paytm is calling the APIs of HDFC Bank, now here this backend, this server is a client for this application because it is calling the APIs of HDFC Bank. So now this is the client for this application. So I hope the concept of client server and the concept of API is clear now. Yeah, as a backend developer, your main job will be create APIs. But to create the APIs, you will have to write code to interact with the databases. You will have to write code to interact with the cache, interact with the other services, to interact with the messaging queue like Kafka and other tools. So yeah, the work of backend is quite interesting. Do we keep backup for backend servers? Okay, we'll talk about those things. Yeah, yes, we keep backup for everything. Okay. So yeah, so let's see the things of core Java, which is important to build something using Spring Boot. So Spring and Spring Boot is nothing but a framework which will help us to create a backend service, create a backend web service, right? That's the use of that API, that framework. So we'll be using that framework to create a web application. So in core Java, you should know. I hope you will be aware of the if else thing and loops, and then how to write methods. What is classes? What are the objects? I hope you have a little idea of OPS concept, like what is inheritance, what is polymorphism, what is. So anyone who is not aware of the OPS concept? So if so many are calling a server, doesn't it crash? No, it doesn't crash because the developers are smart there. Like Paytm servers don't crash, Adobe servers don't crash because they have developers like me, so they are smart enough to handle those things. Yeah, so we have a lot of techniques with the help of which we can take care of those things. No oops in C++, but okay. So we don't have that much time to discuss a lot of things on OPS, but I'll just give the basic idea, like what is the use of OPS. So let me talk about a little bit of inheritance. So let's say we have a class called cat, and cat has fields like name, weight, height, age, color. Yeah. Let's say cat has fields like weight, height, age, and color, right? And so similarly, we have a class called dog, and we have same fields like weight, height, age, and color, right? And when you write a Java code, you will have these things private, and then you will have the public methods like status and getters for all these things. Then we can have the again horse class, which will have again the same fields: weight, height, age, and color. So, I mean, the one way is if you're not using is complete reference good for quick revision of Java. The book, yeah, the complete reference book is really boring book, so I want to just to go through that book. Okay, so you don't need to know everything. You just need to know the base, like how to write the basic if-else solution in Java, how to write loops in Java, how to write functions and methods in Java, how to write classes and objects in Java, and how to write code for inheritance. So you can simply learn from YouTube or Gigs for Gigs or any other website. And books are boring, so and you will like how you will run the code. Like you will have to copy the code and write. So that might take some time. And you don't need to remember the syntax, right? I mean, in interviews they will not tell you to write the code. Okay, so and in interviews they will not tell you to write the code for APIs or Spring Boot if you are a backend developer, right? So they will be asking questions on DS and Algo, and which can be easily solved using the if else and for loops and some collections. I mean, you don't need to use file handling or exception handling or multi-threading, to solve a coding question, right? So you don't need to remember the syntax of file handling or multi-threading or exception handling or OOPS, right? So you don't need to remember the syntax. Just have a look at like how things work, so that you can use them easily. Yeah. So okay, so I mean, you'll have the 1 week like so tomorrow we'll have the next class. Piyush will take the next class, and Piyush will discuss about the multi-threading and Maven if he will get some extra time. And then from the next week we'll learn how to create. I mean, how to create and how to build web services using Spring Boot. So we'll start getting those things from the next Saturday. You will have the 1 week to revise the basic concepts of core Java if you're not familiar with those things. Are we using Java IO or QS assignment and test? Yeah, we'll share every assignment and everything on the WhatsApp group. So be there on the WhatsApp group. But are we using java.io class or Java's Neo for file and streams and handling in our sessions? Okay, the first thing is I mean, we can use any of them, right? If you know all of them, that's good. But see, I mean, if you don't know how to write a code, you can simply Google like how to write a code for file handling, and you can simply use that code. So you don't need to invest a lot of time to learn the file handling thing. It can be done in 20 minutes. So we'll not be so we'll be using the file thing in our project. In our project, we'll be creating a Excel file in which we'll have details of the transactions, and we'll be sending the email of that. So that is a portion of that project. So in that project, we'll be using the file handling. So for file handling, we have some other classes in Spring as well. So you can use any of them. You can either use java.io or java.neo. Although I'm not aware of java.neo, but you can use that. Or you can use the Spring classes for that. Can you just explain OOPS with a real world example like Paytm, how OOPS is used to design solution for a problem in Paytm? Yeah. So, and of course, these are quite basic things. So to understand those things, you should know about design patterns. So we use design patterns to solve some problems. We don't use the simple inheritance. So in design patterns, we'll be using inheritance, we'll be using encapsulation, we'll be using polymorphism. Yeah, so we use design patterns to solve some challenging problems. So for those things, you should know about design patterns, which is not part of this course. But yeah, we'll discuss about like how to use these things to design APIs or design databases in a better way. Okay. Yeah. So what is, let's say we have a class called dog, cat, and horse. So, and if you are writing code like this, so what is the issue with this code? Anyone? If you're not using inheritance and we are writing things like this, so what will be the issue with this thing?
It's repetitive.
Yeah, it's code duplication. Yeah, it's redundant code duplication. Yeah. So to reduce the duplication or to reduce the code duplication, we have the inheritance, right? So we can have a base class called animal, and all these common fields will be in that class, like weight, height, age, and color, so that we don't need to repeat those things in every class. We just need to extend that class, and the code written in the base class will be copied in the all the child classes. So that is the use of inheritance. I hope this is clear. Okay. I don't think I need to write code for this because it's quite simple, and you can simply find some articles on inheritance, like how to write code in Java for inheritance. So you can do that by yourself, I guess. Yeah, great. In fact, I'll share some links. In fact, on tracks we have the links, right? Let me show you the tracks, like how you can use our tracks to see the. You can go to Geeks of Geeks. You can go to the courses, and then you can go to live batches. You will have, so your batch is JBL 4. Yeah. So you can go to your batch. Okay, so in the live classes section, you will have the section for like the current lecture is live, so that's why it's in live section. This is the second lecture, which is in the upcoming section, and you can find the archived. Okay, so recordings will be there in the archive section, so you can simply access, you can simply watch the recordings from the archive section, right? So this is about the live classes. Then we have the tracks. I hope you can see that. So in the tracks, we have some theory, like you can know about like what is classes, and you will have this thing, what is class, what is object, how to write code in Java to initialize an object. So you can simply follow these things to know the basics of Java. So we'll be providing some theories. Of course, we have tracks for every topic. Like we have tracks for Spring Boot, we have tracks for RESTful APIs, and Spring Data, then Spring Security, then Redis, Kafka, everything. We have to add some more content, but we'll be adding those contents week wise. Some of these tracks might not be visible to you because I mean, those tracks are not open. We'll be opening those tracks weekly, but I hope you will have the access of this track of core Java, so you can read things from here. And if you want to revise the basic things, then you can simply watch some YouTube video or something to revise the basic concepts. Want mutility effect if we are using threading? Is there a link where I can see what all topics I can cover in a specific class? Yeah, WhatsApp. So in the WhatsApp, I'll be sharing all the things like what I covered in the class. In fact, I can't share all the details, like, but I can share the name of the topics. But some things might miss because I can't remember everything, right? So it's better to go with the recordings if you're missing the lecture. Just do headings. Okay. So this is inheritance. The benefit is we are reusing the code. Like we are writing the code at one place, and the other classes are reusing them, right? The second thing is encapsulation. So what is the use of encapsulation? I hope you know what is encapsulation. With this space, I don't think we'll cover the syllabus. So it's my job to cover the syllabus. Don't worry about the syllabus, right? We'll be covering the syllabus. So don't worry about the syllabus now. I mean, so this is the fourth lecture, right? So this is the fourth online batch. So I have taught the 3 offline batches and 3 live batches. So I know how much time things take to explain. So yeah, so we won't miss anything. Yeah. So what is the benefit of? I mean, what is the use of encapsulation? What is the use of that? I mean, what is the benefit of encapsulation? To achieve data hiding, okay. Achieve loose coupling. How encapsulation happens through? Yeah. So one thing is like data hiding. Okay. 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 Let's say you have a class called user, and we have fields like ID and name and then age, right? And let's say the age of a person can't be less than 0, right? So let's say all these fields are public. I mean, all these fields ID, name, and age is public. Then let's say I have some other class, and in that class I'm going to create a new user one equal to new user, and I can simply change the age of that person to -10, right? Which is not, I mean, which should not be allowed. Sorry, is my voice clear? So how we can get rid of this thing? Like how we can make sure that okay, the age of a user can't be negative. By making data private. It's really bad answer. So if the age is private, let's say if I want to assign the age to 20, then how we can assign that? I mean, if this is private, then you won't have, I mean, you can't, set that value to anything. So my use case is that I want to, I mean, I can set the value of age to anything more than 0, but I can't set its value to less than 0, right? Like this operation should be allowed, but this one should not be allowed. So how we can implement this thing using this variable? Okay, guys, it's really basic thing, right? I mean, you should be aware of this thing, like how to do this. Setters and getters. Okay, so what we'll be doing in the setters and getters? What will be the, okay, so what will be the code of setter and getter? Make sure it is okay. Yeah. So what he's saying is, let me open the editor now. Okay, by the way, this is a web service, user service that I was using. I'm going to write a simple Java class with main 3. Okay. Public. We have a class called user. Sorry. Class called user, and it has fields like ID, age. So the idea was that the age should not be set to minus. So we can have a setter methods like set age. Yeah. So in this method, what we can do is we can simply make sure that if the age is greater than or equal to 0, then only we'll allow this thing. Otherwise, we can throw some exception, right? So these things we can make private, and we'll have a public method called setter. So with that of the setters method, we can. So let's say if someone wants to age the set of a given user, he will have to use the setters method. And in this method, we have this logic like, okay, you can't set the age of a user to negative. Right? So this is the use of encapsulation. We will have the access, and we'll have the control to set the values of any field. Right. Is this clear?
Indeed.
Sorry. Any doubt? Anyone? Okay. Yeah. So when this is the use of encapsulation, we can have the control over setting the values of a class, right? Another thing is when you're using a class, so in class we have some values, we have some attributes, and we have some methods. So we are encapsulating them. We are simply binding them together. So class itself is an example of encapsulation. So when we bind something, okay, let me give one more example. Let's say we have, okay, let's say we have a class called train service, and it has a method to calculate fare, right? Okay, so this method will calculate the fare of a train. So in this, let's say in this input, we'll have the fields like train name, the train name, or the starting station, or the end station, or a lot of fields. So and it's not a good design to pass a lot of arguments in the function. The better thing will be, we can have a class called, let's say, fare data, and we can encapsulate these fields like the train name, the starting station, the end station, the type of the coach, and everything in that class. So we can encapsulate those fields within a class, and then the input parameter can be of that class. Like in the input of this calculate fare function, will have an instance of the fare data, right? With the help of the data of this class, we can calculate the fare and return. And is the meaning of encapsulation clear? Like, why do you need encapsulation? And okay, so why we are encapsulating this thing? It's a pattern called, I mean, if you know about design patterns, it's a kind of pattern where we should always encapsulate things which are changing within a class. So that's why instead of passing multiple parameters, we should create a class, and we should pass that thing within a class. I mean, if you know about the command pattern, you can read these things in the command pattern. And in fact, when you will have a look at the request and response, so request is itself a class, right? Like we can have multiple requests, but when we use a framework, they encapsulate everything within a class called request class. Similarly, when a server will be sending something in the response, they will be encapsulating all these things in the response class. So that is another use of encapsulation. Is that clear? Builder pattern, okay. This thing, I don't think it's builder pattern. Okay, you might be talking about something else. Okay, now then we have polymorphism, right? So one thing is called, okay. So we have one thing which is dynamic polymorphism, which is method overloading, overriding. Can't write this again. Then we have static polymorphism. I hope you are aware of like what is method overloading and overriding. Anyone who is not aware of method overloading thing? Okay, now the question is, what is the use of method overloading? This thing. So in method overloading, we'll have the same function in, like we have, let's say, function called add, and we'll have, let's say, int a and int b, return a plus b, and then you can have the same function named with other parameter, like let's say char a and what is the benefit of method overloading? Same name, same class is overloading. No, I'm asking about what is the use of, on what is the benefit of method overloading? No, in method overloading, we can't use the superclass, right? Like here, I written the same method. So what is the use of so what I'm saying is, I mean, we can, let's say, so we can define a method like add a string or something. I mean, why we are using the same method name? What is the use of, what is the benefit of using the same function name? That's my point is, like we can have a different name. Which one of the two is overloading? This is an example of overloading. We didn't talk about overriding yet. This is okay. So this is an example of method overloading. So in method overloading, you will have the same function name, but types of or numbers of arguments are different. You can have a look at like what is overloading with some other example. I didn't get the answer yet. Like what is the use of method overloading? You can achieve overload. No, it's method overriding, right? In method overloading, you can't achieve your own implementation, right? I hope you know what is overriding and overloading. Meaning same number multiple parameters. Okay. Which of treated add a common method can be used for multiple situations as per the input. You can achieve the readability. Okay. We can alter with the okay. So someone is saying you have to use same function. I mean, this is really funny. Like you have to use same function to but pass different parameters. Yes, I mean that is method overloading. But what is the advantage of doing that? And why we can't write a different function name? And why we are repeating the same function name? That is my question. And why we are using the same function name? And why do we have the concept of method overloading? Why we are not using some other function name? That is my question. Code readability, yeah, it is. It can be one of the benefits for documentation. Okay, don't have to remember. So yeah, that makes sense. Yes, yeah. So I got the answer. The answer is, let's say we have a class called adder. So okay, again the class is itself is a service, right? I mean you can consider a class as a service, and the class and the service will be providing some services. That means, so if I'm assuming that class is a service, then the class will be providing some services through its APIs, right? So APIs are nothing but the methods here. So so let's say we have a class called adder, and adder is a web service. Let's say adder is a service, or it provides the service of adding something, right? Let's say uh, let's say I'm in the main class and I have to add two strings, right? The string, let's say, is equal to ABC, and a string, sorry, okay, the string is equal to GGG. Okay. So let's say I don't know how to add numbers. I mean, I don't know how to write code for adding two strings. So what can I do is I can use the services of another class called adder. So here adder is a service provider, and it has the services. It will help us to add two numbers or two strings or two characters or three strings or three characters, right? And how it is, I mean, and how we can use its services. It has the public APIs. Methods are nothing but the APIs, right? So now I'll be using these APIs. So if we can make that method static, we can use them directly. So public static. Don't ask me when to use a static. Okay, you can read on Google. You can study this thing from Google. Yeah. So now let's say if I want to get these two strings added, what I can do is I can simply write a string that says C is equal to, I'll use the services of adder API. So I'll use the add API of adder. Adder is the, let's say, so here adder is, let's say adder is the server and add is the API. And I'll pass inputs A and B. The server will return the output, right? So here, I mean, let's say I'm the client and I'm using the APIs of a server. So keeping the same name will help the client to remember those APIs, right? Let's say if adder has a different method for adding two characters, or it will have different, let's say if it has a different name for adding two numbers, in that case, the client will have to remember a lot of APIs, a lot of method names. That's why if we have we have, a single name called add, and by calling that single API, I can do a lot of things added. Then I should, use only one function, right? I should use only one method name. So that's the benefit. The client will have to remember only one method name. The client will have to remember only one API, right? So that's why we have the method overloading. Okay, it will, okay, let's have, sorry, let's say, so basically we have a method for three inputs like ABC. I hope the purpose of our method overloading is clear. If not, let me know. Collection classes example, add or put method are overloading. Yeah, the advantage is to have the clean code. Yes, it will have the clean and readable code, and the client can remember the code easily. That is the one benefit. Okay. I'll talk about method overloading in the abstraction. Yeah. So let's talk about the abstraction. So what is the use of abstraction? Yeah, and you should know like what is the use of something. Right? No one is going to ask like what is abstraction. They will ask. So they will give you a problem and you will have to solve that. And you might use abstraction to make that thing easier to use or make that thing better. So in interviews, no one is going to ask you like what is abstraction or what is inheritance. You have to solve some questions using these concepts. Hiding sensitive data. But we were hiding data using the encapsulation, right? In the encapsulation itself, we were hiding the data using the private variables. So hiding data is not. Yeah. Okay. Let me show you the example of. Sorry. Okay. So this is the google.com, right? So the client is interacting with this user interface. So this is called interface. For me, I mean the full form of UI is user interface. So as a user, I'm interacting with Google on this web page and I'm searching something, right? So what is happening here is here is the Google server and Google services, and here is the client. Here is the, let's say, client means human is working on Chrome browser. Okay. So we don't know, like we don't have any idea like how Google is searching that Sachin string in their database and how it's returning the response, right? We don't have any idea about that thing. The client is interacting with the interface, and this interface is called the UI, the user interface. So the user will be interacting with this interface, and behind this interface we have all the complexity. So using the interface, you can hide the complexity, you can hide the implementation details. Like a user will not have any idea like how Google is implementing those things because we are just interacting with the interface, right? So interfaces are used to hide the complexity, to hide the implementation of details, and yeah. So basically, we are simply. I mean, user don't need to know the like how Google works, right? They just need to interact with the interface, and behind the interface things. I mean, you don't need to know the details. Like, let's say I'll give one more real example. Let's say this is the Paytm and Uber is calling the APIs of Paytm to do something. Let's say the API is send money, and in that API, the user's money will be transferred to the wallet of Uber, right? So Uber just need to, so Paytm will have the interface and the Uber will be interacting with that interface only, right? Uber don't need to know anything about like how Paytm has implemented its send money API, what is the database Paytm is using, how they're using cache, how they're using messaging queue, or I mean, is their backend based on Node.js or Java or Python? They don't know any detail. Like we don't have any idea like how Google is searching that thing. I mean, we don't have any idea about the database, the backend technology that they are using, the algorithm they are using. So using interfaces, we can hide the complexities, and users, the clients, just need to know about the basic things like to search something on Google, you just need to know how to click the search button, and to get the services of Paytm, Uber just need to call one API. That's all. You don't need to know like how things work behind the scene. So that is the use of interface. Is that clear? API calling is abstraction. API calling is abstraction. Abstraction is used in API calling, right? In abstraction, no. In abstraction, we don't hide the data. In encapsulation, we hide the data. in abstraction, we hide the implementation, we hide the complexity. Right. Yeah. So normally in Java, so you can have an interface, and interfaces will have some unimplemented method. This is a function one, and this is function two, and the classes that will be implementing the interface will have to implement those methods. Okay. Again, there are a lot of principles, design patterns based on inheritance, based on abstraction. So we'll talk about those things when we'll be working on those concepts. But the basic idea of abstraction is we are hiding the implementation. A good example of abstraction is, I believe, is when we have a code for a music playlist. We don't ask the user is the index of the array where the song is located. Yes, that is also a good example. But I guess these examples are also not bad. That I just talked. Okay. So I don't write the code for this thing because you can have a look at the code on the track section for your batch. Yeah, so this is all about OOPS. We'll be using these things in the Java backend course. So please make yourself comfortable with these things. So now we'll have a break of 10 minutes. I'll be back at 9:55 p.m. IST. We'll have a break of 10 minutes. And if you have doubts, you can simply ping in the chat section. I'll be happy to reply your doubts. Okay, so I have come back. The one question is like, can we show these projects in Spring in our CV? Yes, you should. I mean, write all these skills in your resume, and you can write that project as well. Right. See, I mean, if once you're done with the course, you can simply write and add these things in your resume, and you can easily get the call from a lot of companies because they will look for these things only. Like they will look for the Spring Boot, RESTful APIs, Hibernate, JPA, Redis, Kafka, and all these things, Spring security, and all these things are being covered in this course. So yes, you can. I mean, you will get a lot of interview calls for the Java backend role, and you can crack the interviews as well. I mean, in interviews, they will not be asking a lot of questions on Spring. They will be asking questions on DSNL questions, the questions on design patterns and system design. They will not. I mean, some startups might ask some questions on Spring Boot, but the main question will be on coding itself. Yes, the interviews will be based on DSL mainly. So to give interview in backend, we do not need to know servlet. No one is using servlet, right? So there's no need to know about servlet, right? And let's say if some very old projects are using servlet, then you can learn that thing in I guess 2-3 days. It won't take much time. So Spring is the better version of servlet, you can say. So servlet was used when there was no Spring. Once the Spring has come, no one is using servlet. I mean, the old projects are made in servlet. That's why, I mean, legacy products are there using servlet. But the code is quite similar. You can learn that thing as well. Shall we start? No, I'll take some more time. Okay. So that was about OOPS. The next thing is we'll be using some collection. Okay, so about exception handling and file handling. Exception handling and file handling. So we have some other classes in Spring Boot for exception handling. So I'll be talking about that thing in Spring, and for file handling as well. I'll be so we'll be using this thing in our projects. So we'll be learning about these things once we start with the Spring, because we won't be covering these things for core Java. We'll be using the exception handling and file handling using Spring, right? And again, we'll be using some streams, like we'll be using a very little Lambda function. That's quite simple, and I'll discuss that thing at that time only. Okay. And before that, you will have the 1 week, so you can read the basics of exception handling and file handling by yourself, like how to create a file, how to write file, how to read a file in Java, using anything, right? Using simply file class. And similarly, you can read about try catch and other things. We'll learn these things in Spring, like how with the help of a Spring code, we can handle the exceptions for a request. Yeah. So now let's come to the collection thing. So in collections, you don't need to know everything. Like you just need to know the so you just need to know the array list, and you just need to know the hash map, because you'll be using only these two things. You don't need to know the stacks, queue, or tree set or tree map, or other things, right? So array list is nothing but simply a dynamic array, so you can add more elements. And in hash map, you will have the key value pair. So anyone who is not aware of the array list and hash map? Streams, yeah. So I'll be using a little bit of streams in the project. So I'll discuss that thing at that time only. I'll not be discussing the streams today. we'll be using streams in project, so I'll discuss while discussing the project. Okay. And it applies for exception handling, pad handling also. So anyone is not aware of the array list or hash map? Okay, great. Inner classes. I mean, so you can read about inner classes by yourself. Like we will not be covering inner classes here only. Okay, I hope so. Okay, it looks like everyone knows about a relation hash map. Okay, so any use case of array list, like where we should use array list or where we should use hash map? Any use case? No, any example like where like any example where we can use that list? For search APIs, and then hash map. Okay. Hmm. So okay, so when we talk about the data, like data will be stored somewhere. So we can store data in array list and hash map as well. But what do you think? I mean, where the servers like Paytm or Google, where they store the data? I mean, in hash map or array list or some. Okay, so when we store something in array list, where exactly the data is stored? In which portion of computer the data is stored? Heap. Okay. And where heaps are, like where is heap stored? RAM. Okay. Yeah, so all this data is stored in the RAM. So the data in the RAM is not persistent. Let's say if the server is down, then the data will be lost, right? So that's why we have to store the data in somewhere where we can persist. So we need to store data in the database. So when you store some data in the database, okay. So for persistence, I mean, we have to store data in the hard disk, and there are two ways to store the data in the hard disk. One way is that using database, and another way is using files. So if you store some data in the files, that data will also be there in the hard disk. So I mean, once your server is down, the data will be persistent. Like you will not lose your data. Okay. Yeah. So what is the benefit of using a database over file? Like why can't we store everything in the file? Or what is, or if we have the database, then what is the need of files? Why we can't store everything in the database? So my question is when we need files and when we need databases. Faster query data from database. Okay. Manage data is easy. Okay. Concurrency. Okay. Security. Yeah. Yeah. So database provides a lot of extra features like we can. Yeah. So we can search and insert or do all these things in a faster way if you're using databases. And in fact, databases provides things like security and things like concurrency control and other things, right? If you are storing the data in the file, then the searching will be quite slower. So again, what is the use of files? I mean, when we should use something in the file, or which type of data we should store in the file? For very less data, okay. Hmm. Yeah, images can be stored in the file. Yes, images can be stored in the file. Okay. Yeah, for the continuous data, right? We can, yeah, for the hierarchical data also we can store the file. So one example that I will give is, let's say we have a table called user table of Facebook, and the fields are user ID, user name, user email ID, and one field will be, let's say, the photo of the user, right? So that photo might be in MBs. So what do you think? What exactly will be storing in this user table for the photo of that user? Path. Yeah, blob is not the good option. The thing will be, you'll be storing that photo uh, in a file system, and you'll be storing the path of that file to the database. So you'll not be storing the photo in the file, because the data of the photo will be quite large, so you don't need to store that thing in the database. Okay. Yeah, so the idea is, we should be using any connection, array list or hash map, just to store something in the RAM. RAM is just for temporary storing. So the use is, let's say, okay, let's say I was calling the user slash, sorry, search slash users slash q equal to Shashi on the GitHub, right? So GitHub will have a database, and it will have a table called Shashi, and sorry, tables called user, and let's say it will have fields like the username, the mobile number, the email ID, and the other details, right? So when we are searching, so okay, so let's say this is the API, this is the request coming from the client, and we'll have the API. So our backend code will extract this query parameter, which is the Shashi, which is the username, and it will search that thing in the database. And the database will return a list of users, right? Because again, user is a table, so we need a user class. So basically, we need to store that information somewhere in the. So when we are interacting with the database will be returning the users information, a list of users, right? And that might be a string, but we have to store somewhere in the RAM, in the code, so that we can return that data to the client as a response, right? So to store that thing, we can use, let's say, something like array list of users, or user class. And user class, the structure of user class will be quite similar to the user table. It will have all the fields, like it will have fields like ID, name, email ID, mobile numbers, and the data will be getting from the database will be stored in this list. So this is one use of array list. We'll be using array list to store some list, either to uh, but let's say after getting that list, let's say I want to do one filtering. Let's say I will return only those users from that list which has a repository, let's say more than 5. So we'll have that data stored in some array list, and we can iterate in that list, and we'll filter out some of the users which has uh, repository more than 5. So this is one use of using array list, right? So basically we'll be using array list just to store some data just for some time. It's not a permanent storage, right? I hope the purpose is clear. Okay. I hope the purpose of array list is clear, like where we'll be using array list. Okay. Similarly, let's say if I want to store something just for some time, then we can use hash map. So hash map is nothing but a key value pair. So let's say if I want to store something in memory just for some time, so we can do that using hash map. And so that's the simple application of hash map. So we'll be using a list very frequently because we'll be interacting with the database. So to interact with the database, we need some collection. And in fact, we'll be using hashmap as well. So sometime we need to okay. Okay, so I'll explain the use of hashmap when we'll be writing some code to implement some APIs in Spring Boot. Your voice was not clear. I hope. Please repeat hashmap. Yeah. So what I'm saying is hashmap will also be used to store some temporary data when we'll be developing the APIs. So I'll explain the use of hashmap in web services when we'll be building something. Okay, so let me show you like how we can create a simple web application using Spring Boot. Right? I mean, you can simply create your application in 10 minutes using Spring Boot. It's that simple. So let me show you that thing. Okay, so today I'll simply show you that I'll show you that thing on my machine itself. In the next lecture, we'll explore more about this thing, like how to create APIs and all the stuff in Spring Boot, and we'll be doing the live coding. So you'll also be doing coding with me, and you'll also be writing and running your application with me. So today we'll not be doing the live coding, but in the next lecture on next Saturday, you will also be writing code with me using Spring Boot. So today I'm going to show you like how we can create our own web service using Spring Boot. And don't worry about the theory of Spring Boot. We'll cover everything. Don't worry about that thing. So to create the Spring Boot, we have a website called Spring Initializer. So we can use this web page to initialize a Spring Boot project. Okay, so we'll have some dependency management tool. One is Maven, one is Gradle. We'll talk about Maven in next lectures, so don't worry about that. And then you can choose. Will you cover theoretical concept of Spring Boot? Yes, we'll cover everything. Okay, so theoretical means I'll not cover like. Okay, I'll not cover the irrelevant things like when Spring Boot was discovered, who discovered the Spring Boot. But yes, I'll cover the important things like what is Spring Boot and how it help us to create a web service. So I'll discuss important things. Yes. Okay, so I'll choose Java as the language, and this is the Spring Boot version. So yeah, the latest version is 2.3.4. You can go with anyone. Let me go with the 2.2.7. And you can provide the project name. Let's say the project name is Shashi24. And you can select the Java version. So okay, for simplicity, I'm going with Java 8. You can go with Java 11 or Java 12 as well, Java 14 as well. What is a snapshot? Okay, where is that? Okay, yeah. So a snapshot is something which is not yet stable. So it's something under development. Yeah. So let's say so that thing is in testing phase. It's not for everyone's use. Yeah, it's a beta version kind of thing. So you can simply click here, generate to generate that project. So you will have the zip folder, and you just need to. Okay, let me do that thing. So I'm going to I'm not sharing my screen. I'm going to simply extract that zip folder, and then I'll import that folder to my ID. Okay, let me open my ID. Okay, so if you're using the IntelliJ, you will, so you can simply go to the file and you will have the option to new, and in the new you can simply, so now I have a folder in which I have the basic Spring Boot project, which I just downloaded from the website. So I'm going to import that project to my editor, to my ID, which is the IntelliJ ID. So the rule is, the way to import the project is you can go to file, you can click on new, and then in new section you will have the project from existing sources. Because I'm going to import that folder, so I'm not creating a new project. I'm simply importing that folder which we just downloaded, right? So that folder is in downloads. So let me go to the downloads and okay, can we search that? Okay, I should have copied somewhere else, but let me, okay, stream. Let me copy somewhere else then and share that. I have copied that Shashi 24 folder to some other folder called test projects, and now I'll import that in the editor. Yeah. So I have to choose that folder. That folder is on desktop. So on desktop, I have to go to the testing projects, I guess. Okay, I'll clean my desktop sometime. It is in the, yeah, test projects, right? Yeah. And in that we have Shashi 24. Okay, so that's the folder that we downloaded from Spring Initializer. So we have to select the pom.xml. I'll explain like what is pom.xml in next lecture. For now, I'm just using those things. So I'm going to choose the pom.xml file within that folder called shashi.24. So now I'm importing that project to my IDE. Okay. Actually, on my machine, the JDK version is 12. That's why you can see the option for JDK 12. So that code can run on JDK 11, JDK 12, JDK 8. So anything is fine, right? JDK version is not important. So you can use any JDK version to do that. So on my machine it's JDK 12. That's why I'm using JDK 12 itself. If you have multiple versions, then you can choose any one of the JDK, and any version greater than 8 will work fine. And here you'll have the option to build the project. Can't we do same directly from ID instead of downloading G from internet? Yes, we can do that, but I think that will take more effort. Downloading from internet will take less time. I think so. So you can create the project from on your IDE, but I think downloading from internet will save some time. Like you don't need to write the pom.xml file or other things. So now I will have the basic structure of my code. By Maven archetype, is it I didn't get your question, Simon. By Maven architecture project, I didn't get your question. Yeah, so when I'm building the project, my idea is resolving some dependency, which means it is downloading some jars, some Java codes from the internet, which is not present in my JDK. Because we are using Spring, so Spring will have some, other dependencies. Can we load this zip in other ID like Eclipse? Yes, you can do that, but I will not help you in that because I'm not good in Eclipse. So you can use that, but I will not be able to help you if you are facing any issue with that ID. So it's better to use the intelligent because we can help you in that. Yeah, so you can see my screen. It is resolving the dependencies. So it might take some time. If I can explore the project. Okay. So when every dependency is resolved, we'll have the project structure. So here I'll create some. Let's say I'm going to implement my own API. Let's say I'll have API called. So the purpose of his server is, or the purpose of a web service is to provide some services, and you can provide those services with the help of the APIs. So the client can use your services with the help of APIs, right? So let's say my API will be, so one API will be simply hi, which will be returning a string called hello, and another API will be uh, a converter from USD to INR. So the API will be simply convert. Let's say the API will be USD to INR. So this API will be converting the US dollar to INR, Indian currency. So in the input you will have to pass the Indian currency, and the output you will have the USD. So I'll be implementing these two simple APIs. Of course, you can implement, and in the next lectures we'll learn like how to implement the APIs for creating a new user, or how to implement APIs for doing a lot of stuff, right? So we'll come to that, and we'll learn how to implement APIs for APIs similar to search API of Google. So we'll come to those things. For simplicity, and I'll be simply writing code for these two simple APIs. I think dependencies should be, yeah. So if you will have a look at the project structure, here we have the pom.xml. Of course, I'll talk about this file later, but in this folder, in this file, you can define the dependencies, like what exactly your project will be using. So by default, we have the Spring Boot starter. Okay, looks like I didn't select the dependency for web. So let me add that dependency. So here you can add the dependency for web, right? Okay, sorry. Looks like my control is not working. Yeah. So you can select dependencies like Spring Web. So if you want to create APIs, then you will have to add the dependency for Spring Web, right? So I have not selected that. So the one way is you can simply select that dependency from here. Another way is you can simply add the dependency to your pom.xml. So I'm going to add the dependency in the pom Spring Web deployment dependency. So let's say I'm going to use this dependency. Okay, I'll discuss about these things in detail. Don't worry about that. Basically, I need to create. So basically, this is a web service. So I need the dependency for Spring Wave. So I'm adding the dependency for Spring Wave. You will explain how to Spring Initializer react in further classes because I'm losing here. So confusing. Yes, we'll explain like how to use. Yeah, I'll explain like how to use the Spring Initializer. I'm just showing like how we can. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We'll. I'll discuss everything in detail in my next lectures. The purpose of this lecture is just I'm showing like how we can use and how we can create our own web service using Spring Boot. That's the agenda. I'll discuss these things in detail in my next lecture. Okay. So now I have added the dependency for the Spring Wave. So yeah. So now so now the dependency for this is also resolved. So in the source folder you will have the code, and we have a single class which will have a main method, right? So by default I have a single class which is this class. So to write an API, let's say I'm going to create one more class called controller. You can name anything. Let's say the name is simple controller, or you can name anything. And then let's say this simple controller is the REST controller. I'll discuss about like what is REST controller. I'll discuss about that in my next lecture. And let's say I'm going to create a simple API, or let's say okay, I'll share some links that will help you to understand about the types of APIs. Like we have get API, we have put API, we have post API. So we'll cover about those things later. Okay. So let's say the simple API is get mapping and the API is hi. Sorry. It is /hi. And in this API, let's say API is nothing but a method, right? Let's say public. Let's say the method name is say hi, and input is nothing. Let's say the return type is a string. Let's say we have a method called say hi, and in the say hi method, I'm returning a simple string called hello. Again, this is the response. This is the data response data, and the API is hi API, right? So this is you can create your API, and this is the get API. So let me build the project again and run the code again. Yeah, get mapping is for get methods, right? We'll have the post method for post. We'll have post mapping for post methods. Is JAX arrays same as the? Yeah, so JAX arrays is part of Java Enterprise Edition. So Spring Wave has everything which has JAX arrays jersey. So there's no use of using JAX arrays. I mean separately. What is REST controller? Yeah, we'll talk about those things in my next lecture. It's something. It's an inbuilt thing which tells that okay, this is the class which will be handling the APIs. So to run the method, I'll have to run this method which have the main class, right? Which are the main method. So I'll click on that and I'll simply run that method. Annotation, it's called annotations. A REST controller is like main method in Java. No, it's not like that. It means this class is responsible for handling all the requests from the client. Okay. So our application is started. So we can see the message the application is started, and the application is So by default the port is 8080. So let me hit this API from the client. So the client is okay, localhost, the IP is 8080. So when we write google.com, right? So that is the server's address. So I mean, in this case, my service is running on my local machine. That's why I'm writing localhost 8080, and the API name is hi. So I'm writing hi. Let me try the post. It looks like I missed the HTTP thing. You have to append the HTTP thing. HTTP. Yes. The port is 8080. The method is, let me check the spelling of hi. It's a gate call. It is hi. So I think it should work. Uh, Actually, Tomcat is there inbuilt with the Spring Boot. No, if the port is in use, then you can't see the machine running on. Okay. Let me use the starter dependency. Looks like I have missed some dependencies. So let me go to this project and copy the dependencies from here. Okay, so I'll go with the Spring Boot starter web, which is similar to the Spring Boot starter web might be different from the Spring Boot web, or might be different from the Spring web. That's why I'm simply using the same which is used for Spring Boot. Okay, I'll discuss about all those things later, like what is the difference between Spring Web and this is Spring Boot starter web. I'll discuss about all those things. But yeah, I mean, writing APIs is that simple. Let me rerun and show you that thing again. Can we try from Postman? Yes, we can try from Postman. Let me rerun the code again. It's taking a lot of time. Yeah, let me show you one more thing. So what is the port of Google server? So every server has an IP and a port. So what is the port of Google server or any server? Like here we are providing the port number 8080. So what is the port of? Someone said, sorry, 880. What is the meaning of? I'm asking for the port number, right? Yeah, the port is 443 because that's the port of HTTPS. So if I'm writing that, let's see that. If I'm appending the port number 443, what do you think? What will happen? We'll get the same result because 443 is the port of HTTPS. But let's say if I'm writing something like 449, then what will happen? Mhm. We'll get the error, right? We don't get the same response because there's no process running on this port on google.com, so we'll get error or something. In fact, your client will not be establish the connection, so you'll not get anything because there's nothing running on that machine on this port. Is that clear? What is the meaning of port? No, it will not return 449 or 500. The reason is that there's no connection is just established between the client and server because there's no server running on that port, so you can't get 500 error. Right. No, you'll not get those errors, right? Because there's no server running on that port, so how you can get the 4x error or 500 error, right? That's the point. Okay, so this was about the port thing. Yeah, so by default all the applications are on web are on HTTPS and the port number is 443. So let me run this project again. Okay, I'll discuss about those things as well, like what is the meaning of. Yeah, now the project is started. Yeah, so you can see that the Tomcat started on port 8080. I think that was missing in my previous thing. Yeah, so we got the response hello from the server, right? So we can hit this thing from Postman as well. So this is how simple. So now we have created a web service which has a simple API called Hi. So it's that simple to create a web service in Spring. We have got the response hello from the server. So it's that simple. Of course, we can add a lot of things to add a lot of features, but this is how we write APIs. What was error previously? So in the error was the Tomcat was not there. I had not added the dependency for Tomcat. So in the pom.xml, if you are adding the proper dependencies in the Spring Boot, you will have the inbuilt Tomcat, and you don't need to deploy your project on any server. So now I have the inbuilt Tomcat, and on that Tomcat, my application is running. Okay. Yeah, let me implement another API. Okay, let's implement the search API itself. It's quite interesting. Let's say we have one more API, gate map. The API is a search API, and okay, we'll have the query parameter. Is search a word or something. You can name something. Search on. You can simply name anything, and then I'll have it should be request parameter. Request parameter. Okay. Let me have a look at the syntax, like how to take the query parameter in the let me check the query parameter in Spring Boot. Yeah, it should be request parameter, and the syntax will be Yeah, we can use the query parameters, but there is a better way which is called the request parameter. We can use that, and let's say that is string. Let's say it's q. Syntax of that. So basically, in the input, I'll have the q thing, and I have to extract that q as. Okay. Id is equal to this, so I'll have extract this thing. Okay. So yeah, so our API will be something like this. Question mark q equal to search. So I have to store that q thing. So I can write thing like this, right? Request parameter, a string, and I can name that string as uh, let's say q, or simply query parameter or something. Okay. Or let's say for simplicity, I'm going with the q only. And in return, let's say I'm returning okay, the return type of this function should be a string. So let's say I'm simply waiting for Sachin, and let's say in return I'll return a great batsman. Okay, I'll implement this in a better way, but for simplicity I'm simply implementing it like how we can define API like search. Let me rerun the code. How did you start the application? One way is you can simply click here to run the application, or you can go to this class which will have the main method. So when you will download the basic project, basic folder structure from that website, you will have this inbuilt class, right, which will have the main method. So you just need to add classes for controller. Like here I have added a new class for which is simple controller, and I have added the REST controller thing, and then I'm writing the code for APIs. Okay. To run the code, I can simply run this main method. I mean the class with the main method. I mean, okay, so if you're using a framework, it won't take much time to create your own application, because we are using an infrastructure, and that infrastructure provides us a lot of things with the help of which we can create things, quite easily. Let me call this API. Sorry. Looks like it was on another page. So the API will be search API. Okay. It should be, yeah. The good thing is that it says that it's a bad request. The reason is that it's expecting a query parameter, which is q equal to, let's say, something. Let's say Shashi or something. So it's returning another string, right? So ideally, we should use that input parameter to search something in the database, and then we should return the string to the client, right? So let me do that. If you want to deploy Spring Boot applications in local network, will it work properly? Yes, it will work. Like, you can access your code from your local machine, so you don't need any network. Okay, so let me implement the. Okay, so the one way could be when if we had a database, then we will be storing some data in the database, and to search a word, we can simply search the database and return the response accordingly. But currently, we don't have a database and we don't have code for database. So in the upcoming lectures, we learn how to write code to interact with the database so that we can will be able to write multiple types of APIs. Yes, we can use that. Yeah, let me do that one thing. So let's say let's say we have one more class called data store, and let's say in this class I'll be storing the data of the string, right? Let's say it has this, it has a hash map of a string and a string. So instead of using a database, I'm using a simply hash map. And the static method, we can, in the static block, we can, so let's say this is the store. So hash map is the store where we're storing the data. So we'll be, okay. So in the static thing, I'll be adding few more things, like I'll be adding details of, let's say, if someone is searching for Sachin, I'll write a great batsman. Okay, then it should be static. Okay, private static. The idea is, I mean, okay, let me do this thing in a constructor so that I don't need to explain the static thing. Let's say we have a constructor, which is public constructor. And in that constructor, I can simply initialize the hash map with some values like uh, GFG, great website. Okay, so great website, right? Okay. Now I'll have like something has changed in my editor, so okay. So we have methods for searching something. So let's say I'll have a method called search a word. So in that I'll be given a string word, and I'll simply return from the as simple as that. So let's say this data store is the database. So we are simply using a hash map as the database. Yeah, is the voice clear now? Okay, okay. Using external speakers. Okay. Actually, I was not speaking loudly because I was just writing the code. Now I'll explain. Now I'll speak clearly. Yeah, I mean, you can use a map and a hash map both. So now this is the database where I have some data, and I have a method which is getting something from data. Let's say the method name is get from data, get from DB. Okay. So now in the controller, I'll have the data storage. So I'll have one instance of the data store, which is, let's say it's a DB, which is new data store, right? And I'll simply return db dot get from db, and I'll pass that word queue. I hope the implementation is clear. I'm simply hitting the database to get some data of the given word, right? So let me restart the code. So when I'll search for Sachin, I should get a great batsman. When I'll search for Ramu, I should get a great man. So let's see what is happening. Okay, and if I'm passing Shashi, then it should return null. It should return null string. So the string is null. And if I'm passing Sachin, then it should return a great batsman. Mhm. Then I'm passing Ramu, great man. Yeah. So this is how we implement APIs. Okay, I'll be explaining a lot of things in my next lecture. But for today, do you have any doubt that you want to ask? In next lecture, we'll learn how to write GET APIs, what is the GET APIs, what is the POST APIs, what are the PUT APIs, what are the relate APIs, and what is difference between them, and how we can write some code to call APIs of some other web service, right? And then in upcoming lectures, we'll learn about how to interact with databases like MySQL, how to use JPL Hibernate to use those things. Is anyone you trying this now on ID? Okay, so you don't need to try this thing today only. So what you can do is, uh, before the next lecture, you should install Maven on your machine, and then you can try simply running a simple application on your machine after installing the Maven, right? And you can simply, I'll share a YouTube video with the help of which you can try running this thing on your machine. So in the next lecture on Saturday, we'll be doing some live coding. So I'll be writing some code on my machine and running on my machine. Then you will be writing the code on your machine at the same time. So we'll be doing the live coding in the next lecture. Tomorrow, Piyush will be discussing the boring things about multi-threading. Yeah. I missed a lot of things and got confused a lot after the break. Please help out. Help put in the next lecture. Please help put in the next. Yeah. So okay. So in this lecture, I was not discussing. I was not describing everything. Like the idea was just to show you like how we can create Spring Boot applications easily. That was my intention. So after the break, I just describe the useless things that I'll be discussing those things in my next lecture. So don't worry. I'll be discussing all these things like how to create the APIs, what is the meaning of REST controller, what is the meaning of the pom.xml, and how to create APIs, what is Spring. So I'll be discussing all those things. So don't worry about that thing. Uh, when this session will be available on GFG? By tomorrow or by Monday? Is this Zoom safe? I got just immediately and disconnected and reconnected. See, no application is safe, right? So if you talk about Adobe, so Adobe had a security bug. So all the applications might have some bugs. No, I mean no application is 100% safe. And that's the truth, right? No application is safe. But I mean, again, no one is. I don't. So we can do some. You can use some settings to make it more secure. Uh, okay. Yeah, I think we are out of time, so let me do one more thing. Like, okay, so like here we are. Okay, so let me explain this API itself. So here the API signature is something like this. Here the API signature is this thing. Let me explain how our code is handling that API, that request. So basically from browser, we are getting this request, right? So, I mean, this thing is helping us to connect to the server. So our server is running on the local machine on 8080 port. That's why, I mean, the work of this thing is done now, right? So now the Chrome is connected to the application which is running on 8080 port, which is this Spring Boot application, right? Now, when we are calling the search API, the Spring Boot application will come to this class, because here we have the REST controller, which means this class is responsible for. So controller is a class which will be responsible for handling the request. So every request will come to this class, right? I mean, we can have multiple classes having REST controller, so the request will go to all those classes. So it will scan all the methods. Like here we have a hi method, here we have a search method. So this search API is matching with this thing. So this method will be called, right? And here the request parameter means the thing which is coming as a request, right? In the request, we are passing a string called Ramo. So that is request parameter, right? And that thing will be stored in this string called Q, because this is the value of Q. Q means query, right? So normally when we search something, we write Q. Q means a query, right? And I'm using that query parameter to search something from the database. And here we have the database in which we have stored something, and we are getting data from the database. For simplicity, instead of a real database, I'm using a hash map. And in the constructor, I'm simply putting some data just to show you the output. And we have a method called get from DB, in which I'm simply getting something from the hash map. So it's as simple as that. So any doubt in the control of this thing? Again, I mean, okay, so we are using a framework, right? So we will be using a lot of inbuilt things. So you don't need to know everything about the framework. Like I mean, if I talk about Java itself, in Java also we have more than 5,000 classes, right? So, I mean, you can't know everything about every inbuilt class in any language or framework. So the idea is you just need to know the basic, like what is the meaning of this controller, what is the meaning of this thing, and what is the meaning of this thing. You don't need to know everything, right? But the basic things that you're using. Okay. So yeah, so any doubt, like looks like someone has said that. Please make this video available on GFG by tomorrow itself in order to practice. Okay, actually to practice this thing, I mean, you need to install Maven on your machine. So yeah, I'll share a YouTube video with the help of which you can install the Maven on your machine. Yeah, so this video will be there by Monday, I guess. It can be there by tomorrow. I'll try to make it available there by tomorrow itself. But if you want to pass multiple questions, yeah. So what do you think? What we should do to do that? Okay, the good thing is that you can't remember the syntax of everything, right? Like I can't, I don't remember the syntax of how to take the query parameters. So let's say if you have multiple parameters, let's say if we have Q equal to this, and let's say we have some other parameters, let's say P is equal to something else. So how to take those things? Let's say the other parameter is q equal to shamo. So how to take multiple parameters? So to do that, you can simply search on Google, like how to write a Spring Boot API to take multiple query parameters. So we have a documentation of Spring. But you can simply find on Google, like accepting multiple parameters, multiple query parameters in Spring Boot. In Spring Boot, right? So we'll find details like this. We'll have some Stack Overflow links. You can have some other articles, and then you definitely will have the Spring documentation. Like Spring.io is the official documentation of Spring, and you can find everything here. Like you will have everything here. Like you will find the details of Spring Boot, Spring Cloud, Spring Data, Spring everything, right? Simply explore that to know more about these things. So yeah, I mean, you will have to follow some other articles, follow some other links or the documentation to know other details like how to pass multiple parameters, multiple query parameters in the Gate API. Okay. And this is how you learn coding. You will have to look at the documentation to implement something. Please show major project demo if possible. And what is the use of that? Can you show the project's demo? No, I'm not getting the purpose of that. Like, what is the use of showing the project demo? Is that necessary? And we'll be doing that project in the end of the lecture. So, I mean, what is the essence of showing that project now? I'm not getting that point. I have that thing, I can show that, but there's no point of showing that right now because I mean, we'll be doing that project in the last. Yeah, but there's no point of showing that, right? Prerequisites for tomorrow, nothing actually. So he will discuss multi-threading thing actually in Maven. So nothing is the prerequisite for tomorrow's lecture. For the next Saturday's lecture, I'll be showing a lot of details like you should practice things like. So for next lecture, you will have a lot of things to do. We'll have a lot of homework. Like you'll have to install the Postman. You will have to try hitting the lot of APIs. You will have to install Maven. You'll have to try running a simple Spring Boot application on your machine and try running that. Yeah. Whether will be a position to develop the project on your own at the end of. Yeah, and I did. Okay, so I didn't get the purpose of showing the major project demo. That's I'm not showing that. If you have the, if you can select what is the need of that, then I'll do that. But I don't know what is the use of showing the project demo. Whether we'll be able to position to develop the project on your own and then in the message reached late. Sorry. On you on at the end message. Okay, whether we'll be able to do project. Okay, so what do you think? I mean, where, like when I was working at Paytm or when I was working in Adobe, so how I was writing the code, or how any other developer, write the code for APIs. So when I joined Paytm, I didn't have any idea about the Spring or anything. So they gave us some YouTube videos to learn the Spring things, and we were given time of 2 to 3 weeks, and we learn those things by ourselves, like what is APIs and how to do these things and how to interact with the database. I mean, we were not. So at that time, I was aware of only the request response thing and the simple APIs. I was not aware of the Redis. I was not aware of the Spring sessions. I was not aware of the Spring security. I was not aware of the Spring Kafka and what is Kafka and how to use Spring with them. But so you can start building things once you have the basic knowledge of building the APIs, right? And let's say you are given a work on something, then you will have some time to study about that thing and implement that thing by your own. So this is how you learn, right? So, but in this course, we'll be doing everything. We'll be learning how to create APIs, how to interact with databases using JPA, Hibernate, how to what is Redis, and how to how to code for Redis in Spring Boot, how to code for Kafka in Spring Boot, and how to use all these things to build something, build a real web application. So that's the end of the course. So yes, at the end of the course, you can build things. Okay, so in fact, this is a web service, right? This is a web service running on my local machine. If I want to make it public, I just need to deploy this service on a AWS server. So I can do that thing in 1 minute, right? If I have the account on AWS, then I can deploy the service on that machine in 1 minute. So I'll have a web service running on AWS, and anyone can use my APIs, like Hi and Search APIs. So this is the web service. But again, it's a very simple web service. But in this course, we'll learn everything like how to make a complete web service. So yes, at the end of the course, you will have idea of everything. Are we using Spark or Redis? Yes, I'll share everything in the WhatsApp. The video to install. Yeah, I'll share everything. Are we using Spark for Redis? No, we're not using the Spark for Redis. See, we can't cover everything in the course. The thing is, we'll teach you everything which is important, and the rest of the things you can learn by yourself, right? So if you have the knowledge of basics, then you can explore the documentation. Like in this course, I'm not going to tell you like how to take multiple query parameters in a request. I'll tell like, okay, how to take a single query parameter in the request in the GET APIs. And if you want to have a look at that, like how to take multiple parameters, then simply search in Google, right? You will find the solution on Google, on some other website or some other article, or on the documentation. So you will have to figure out these things by yourself. We can't cover everything in the course. That's the idea. Okay, I'm done for today. Any other question? Any other doubt? Okay, so I hope everyone is on WhatsApp group, because I'll be sharing everything on the WhatsApp itself. So I'll be sharing all the links. I'll be sharing all the YouTube videos on the WhatsApp. So you must be there. Okay, thank you. I'm done for today. And you can simply introduce yourself on the WhatsApp. Like you can ping your name, your current job or location, something, so that we can be familiar with each other, because we'll not get much time in the class to interact. So we can interact on the WhatsApp group. Okay, thank you. Good night. Bye.